Okay, so we're going to go over linear equations. And this is the graph they gave us. This graph represents a banquet hall's revenue. What they mean by that is on our x-axis, the amount of money you have to pay them is determined by how many people show up. So our x represents the number of people. Right? So number of people, hashtag people. That means number in real life. And here, this is how much money you owe. Okay, depending on how many people show up. They gave us one piece of information. They told us, or they gave us what I'll say is a coordinate, and we'll talk about what that means. This first one represents which, an x or a y value?
An x.
Yeah, and what about the next one?
Y.
Yeah, so in this case, what is the x referring to? What is x measuring?
The number of people.
Okay, so what does this tell us? That 160 people will be what?
They have to pay that much money.
Yeah, $5,700 they'll have to pay, and that's kind of our coordinate there for it. Good. We also found out a couple other pieces of information. We discovered this coordinate. What was this coordinate? Referred to
200
yeah.
people and $7,000.
Exactly. So we write it as a coordinate, but that's exactly what it means. The number of people was 200, and it cost $7,000 to have that many people. One other coordinate that we didn't talk about in this question yet, but it's going to be actually really important, is this one down here. Okay, and the reason being is because this is really the y-axis, and this coordinate is where we're crossing the y-axis. Do you know what they usually call that? So a word starts with an I. Usually call it the y something. Y
intercept.
Yeah, that's right. This is the y-intercept, and that's really important for building an equation. Do you know what that coordinate is by looking at it? Can we estimate what we think it is? We'll say I didn't draw it perfect, but it should be halfway between those two.
So 0 and 500?
Excellent. 0 and 500. And what does that mean?
Maybe that just to rent the place out, it's $500.
Even if nobody comes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So to book it, if I book with these guys, I got to put a deposit of $500. If nobody comes to my birthday party, that sucks because I still owe them $500. Right? That's what it's essentially telling us. And they want us to build an equation. So because this is a straight line, linear equations are usually written in the form y is equal to m times x, so mx, plus b. Okay. Do you happen to know what the m and the b stand for?
M is the slope.
That's right, m is slope. And b is it's whatever this thing's called.
The y-intercept.
That's right, the y-intercept. Good. So, I know it's a lot to remember from last year. What we're going to do is, the y-intercept's pretty easy. We already figured out what it is. What is the y-intercept? What's that number?
500.
Yeah, we got it by looking at it. 500. Works out great. So I'm going to zoom in a bit. I'm going to do some algebra to solve this. So because we're in the form y equals mx plus b, change our colors. Okay. We already knew that our b here is 500. So b is equal to 500. We already have that. So in terms of building our equation, we're already off to the races. Y equals mx plus 500. Okay. The only other thing that's important for us to solve is m. And there's actually a couple ways we can do this. First of all, we have 1, 2, 3 different points. I only need a pair, and I can use any of the pairs. So I can use these two, I can use these two, I can use these two. I can use any of those pairs to find the slope. Okay? Slope is equal to many, many things, and we'll write out a whole list of them for us to help us remember. Okay? So m is usually equal to our slope, and our slope is known as the rise over the run, which is the change in y over the change in x. And the way we represent that as an equation is y2 minus y1 over x2 over x1. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, do you remember that equation?
Yeah.
So we're going to take two of the coordinates that we had. And two of the coordinates we had, we'll just go with, these would be the easiest, the two at the bottom. But I'm actually going to take the one that they gave us and the 200.
Okay.
So one of them was 160 and the other one was 207,000. Whoops. Oh, nuts. 207,000. Excellent. Okay. So I need to call one of them coordinate 1 and one of them coordinate 2. It actually does not matter which one is which. So I'm just going to say you're number 1 and you're number 2. And the reason I do that is so I can designate this being x1 and this being y1, and this being x2, and this being y2. And it doesn't matter, again, we could have called it the other way, we'll still actually end up with the same answer. So we're going to plug into that equation there. That's going to be important for us. Okay, so in order to find slope, m is equal to, my y2 is 7,000. Perfect. What is my y1?
5,700.
Yep. And that's all going to be divided by what?
200
Mm-hmm.
and then 160.
Yep. Subtract 160. Subtraction is important there. Okay, so let's see if we can do this. Can you, in your head, do that subtraction?
2,000. No, 3,000.
That's okay. It's a tough one. Think of it like this. This is 5,700, so it's really close to which thousand?
6.
6. How much do we have to add to get to 6?
It's 7,000, so 3,000.
It's 700, so we have to add.
Sorry.
That's okay. 300,
Yeah.
right? And then from 6,000, how much is it to 7,000?
1,000.
Yeah, so we add 1,000 and our 300, and we get 1,300. That's okay. That's a different way of subtracting, but we're fine. Here, 200 subtract 160. That's going to be 40 for us. Okay, so we essentially have the slope, but they usually like to put it in the lowest form. Okay, so I can knock those zeros off right off the bat, and I have to see if 4 goes into 130. It does not go in evenly, so I can leave it as this fraction, but I bet you, and because it's money, we probably won't leave it as a fraction. So here's the idea. Technically in lowest forms is 130 over 4, okay? But if I were to divide these, it would actually be 3.25. I think it should be 32.5 is our answer. We're going to double check. 130 divided by 4 equals 32.5. Excellent. So that's our slope. Our slope is 32.5. In other words, that's what m is equal to. So we can now replace that number in the equation. Y equals 32.5, okay, x plus 500. So we now just found our equation. Okay, so all of that slope work, zoom out a bit. All of this slope work here was to help us find our m value, and this is our y-intercept, so that helped us find our b value in this case. Now there's another way we could have solved this, okay? And this would have been the traditional way to do it. But I'm going to show you something they're going to show you in a couple lessons, so you might as well kind of get into it. Another way we could have done this, and then we're going to look at this point right here, okay? What this says is an x and y value, so a coordinate together, are in this equation. Okay, and we can find any coordinate. We have a whole bunch, in fact, right? We know that this is a coordinate and this is a coordinate, and this would be the x, either of these x values, accompanied by one of these y values. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to plug these in for the x and y, and we're going to isolate for m, okay, to see if we are right in what we are doing. This is kind of our way of checking. And if you don't understand this way, that's okay. You're going to get to it in a little bit anyways. So our m, our x, our plus 500, and we're going to take that coordinate of 200 and 7,000, okay? This is the x value, this is the y value. So what that means is I can plug in 200 for x, and I can plug in 7,000 for the y. And that way I'll only have m left. That'll be the only unknown, the only variable, okay? So 7,000 is equal to m times 200 plus 500. Okay. Well, I got to isolate for m. That's my goal here. We'll use green. Got to isolate for m. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to bring 500 to the other side. We kind of think of it like reverse bed mass when we do stuff like this. So when I bring 500 to the other side, do you know what it'll become?
Negative.
Perfect. So we got 7,000 subtract 500, and that's going to give us 6,500. And I'm just going to write this in a form we're more used to looking at. Usually when we multiply those, do you know how we would write that?
200m.
Yeah, we usually write the coefficient, they call it, in front. So 200m. 7,000 minus 500 gives us our 6,500 is equal to 200m. Okay. And the goal is still to get m by itself. So how do I move that 200 to the other side?
Do you multiply by 200?
Okay. So this is multiplied by 200. That's right.
I mean divide.
Yeah, exactly. So because it's multiplied, we got to divide.
Yeah.
Perfect. So they technically divide both sides, but the short way about it is these kind of just cancel out when we focus on this.
Mm-hmm.
So m is equal to, now this doesn't quite look like our slope, but we can kind of reduce it. Well, you know what? And that did reduce farther. I just realized that now. Okay. One of the quick ways to do stuff like this, is that the right amount of zeros? I think so. Write this right? I think so. I should be able to get rid of these zeros. Oh, yes, I can. So this 0 drops off on both. This 0 drops off. And we have 65 divided by 2. Okay, so 65 divided by 2. I got to double check. So I'm going to divide these values. 65 divided by 2. So 65 divided by 2 equals 32.5, which is the exact same slope we found the other way, right?
Mm-hmm.
So either of those methods help us. I know that was a lot. But you could just do the first one or you could just do the second one. You don't have to do both. I just wanted to prove it.
Yeah.
So I did it 2 different ways.